What's up, dudes? HW here, just messing around with the JM Continuum pack on the ToneX. And I wanted to talk about this because I get a lot of questions. HW, what do we do with the input trim on the ToneX? I'm just going to give you my experience. This is not meant to be an end-all, be-all, but it is meant to be the end-all, be-all if you use Tone Junkie profiles. The answer is, on the pedal, plus 8.5. Why? Why? How did we get here? Y'all, how did we get here? We're just trying to enjoy some tone, and everyone's like, input this. Input that. That's a clon and a tube screamer together. It is a combo you should check out. It's a really good one. How did we get here? Here's how I got here. I'm going to tell you my story of how I landed at plus 8.5 and why it's the default on the pedal. When I first got the ToneX, I noticed there was no, you have to do the ins and outs yourself. And so what that means is, at the point a person captures an amplifier, they have to send out all the beeps and boops and the test signals. And those beeps and boops and test signals are not calibrated before they go out. Because how could they be? The software sends something to an out, a physical out that is at your interface. And it doesn't know if that out is set high or low by some other program that comes in the chain after it. And so what happens is the ToneX really doesn't know at what level the test sounds were sent out. But what it can do is this. It can listen to those test sounds, or rather the amplifier can receive those test sounds. When the sound comes back, it knows how it sounded and it builds a model. It builds a tone model. And if you input your guitar at that same level, you will have an accurate representation of that amp. But if you input your guitar at a different level, it's gonna be the equivalent to either running a boost up or a cut to your signal before it hits the amp. So that's the only difference we're talking about. We're talking about basically, if you get it wrong, it's like having a pedal in your chain that can either cut the gain a bit or boost the gain a bit before it hits the amplifier. That's the equivalent of what goes on with your ToneX tone models as it compares to an amp in the real world. Does that make sense? When you're creating these sounds, you have to send out a level and it hits the amp, and ToneX then does its job. It makes an accurate representation. But it doesn't know if you were boosting that signal, cutting that signal. It doesn't know if you shot it up 20 dB or minus 5 dB. It doesn't have any idea what you did because it's just software sitting there going, here's my out. Be careful with it. Be careful. Please let that out come back to me. And it does. It comes back with the amp sounds and it figures it all out. Well, when I first started doing the ToneX, I bought one of these capture boxes, or rather they sent me one of these capture boxes. And I noticed that all this capture box was, and you can look at the capture box, it's just a way to put in two signals and control the ins, and control the levels. And so it's very helpful, but you don't need one. But what I figured out was, I noticed immediately that I had no reference to calibrate this sound. And so I thought, well, how hot do I send the signal out? How do I know it's the same as my guitar? So I went like this. I know. I'll plug my guitar into the amp and I'll listen to it. And then I'll plug it into my interface going through ToneX, and I'll do the test the live playing. When you make an amp, you can play it live too. And I'll adjust the send level until those sound the same. So that plugging into my software sounded the same as plugging into my amp. And then I would assume that those test signals were then correct. Lo and behold, they were. Because later, ToneX changed some stuff to this update, and they said, hey, actually, plus 8.5 is really where the pedal should be, because for whatever reason, the pedal will have stuff at 8.5 dB lower, so you got to go up 8.5 dB if you want it to. I don't really quite understand why. You can probably watch Devin at Tone Shepherd. He probably has done an exhaustive video on this. Shout out to him, because I'm just telling you what works for Tone Junkie. When I plug my amp in and when I use the pedal at plus 8.5, which is the ToneX default, they sound the same. And I've done that a bunch of times with different stuff, and it always comes out sounding like this is how this sounds on the amp. It's so dynamic. And so that methodology worked. It ain't fancy, but I can tell you that when you're making these, if you ever want to make these yourself, just make sure that your send levels, when you're the signal you get into the ToneX, level your guitar, and then from there, when it's in the okay range, it's receiving the right amount of guitar, make it sound like it does. Physically unplug it, plug it into the amp. How else would you check it? That was kind of the problem I was faced with when I first got this. There wasn't a ton of, there was probably documentation, but I wasn't going to read it. But there was, I was like, let me get my hands dirty with this stuff. And I thought, well, it better be that the guitar level I send has to be correct. And the only other reference point I had was plugging it in direct, because we're after accuracy, I think, right? And that gets you the right sound. On the pedal, that changed to 8.5. That's 8.5. That's what ToneX recommends. That's what it is. Now, other people may have a setup that's calibrated differently. They may send at 0 or whatever, and so you got to boost this much. They may send, hotter signal or something, and so you got to adjust. One important thing to remember is the gain on the ToneX is an input gain. It's the same thing as that gain trim. When you do that in-gain trim, you're basically telling the ToneX, turn up the gain this many dB on all of my, globally across all of my presets in my pedal. For Tone Junkie, that's correct. But if you are using somebody else, all I would recommend you do is put your pedal up at plus 8.5, listen to the sound. That's how Tone Junkie is supposed to sound. If you then want to put it back at 0, put it back at 0, call up that tone model, take the gain on that individual tone model from Tone Junkie and jack it up until and you'll have to do it pretty high, probably not almost at, you probably have to do it half, you're going to start at halfway. So, because that's like 5, that's like the default. You're going to probably have to go like all the way to 3 o'clock. You're gonna have to go halfway all the way to max. And you're probably gonna get close doing that to having it at 8.5. So just dial it up, save it, there you go. Now you're playing nicely with anybody who might be at, they say, put your pedal at plus at 0. And I'm saying Tone Junkie needs to be at plus 8.5. A lot of people are saying 8.5, a lot of people are playing 0. I had some people go, I tested it out and I think it sounds best at 6.5. It's like, cool. That's cool. For their guitar, they liked that it was like a little more open and softer input. I had somebody else tell me I jack it up to like plus 10 or something. And cool. That means you just like a little boost. And louder is more good, as my friends at JHS say. So if you're adding a dB, yeah, it's always going to probably sound really good and it's going to sound great. ToneX is a fabulous, fabulous platform. It is my fastest growing segment of Tone Junkie, and it's really growing fast. It's really picking up a lot of steam. I'm seeing a lot of new people come in. Hey, I just got a ToneX. Can I get the everything pack? Hey, I have this question. And that's kind of why I'm making the video, so I can send it to them and they can understand it. Yeah, HW, out. I'm happy to answer any questions, by the way, in the comments. So if you have questions about this, if you run into anything, leave me a comment below. I'll do my, let's have a chat. This is a good place to do it. Email is a good place to do it. But why don't we, if we do it here, other people can see it. So let's do it.